Clemson, Penn State. I thought this was supposed to be a national championship game, folks. Well, they will play, and with a few fewer stakes on the line. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football to talk some Clemson, and we got the best guy that I know of available to talk some Clemson football. It's, of course, Jason Priester from the Clemson Insider, so check out Jason's work right there. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How about yourself?
I am doing just fine. And again, appreciate you being here. Let's talk about this recruiting class that came in as 20 commits, 20 signed, number 19 in the country, depending on your service. What are your thoughts about who stands out to you?
I guess it's better than last year's class that didn't even rank inside the top 20. So, I mean, I guess there's improvement there, huh? If you look at it, there's some things to really like, and I think there are some holes. It kind of starts at the top there with wide receiver Naheem Burrows. He's the highest rated kid in the class. He's kind of a slot receiver type guy. Elite level speed, electric with the ball in his hands. With Antonio Williams, finishing up his Clemson career this year, a chance for this guy to come in and make an immediate impact on that offense next year. One of the other things that stands out in a positive light are the 6 offensive linemen. I think Matt Luke really kind of just killed it in his first recruiting cycle. 5 of those guys are 4-star talents. The lone exception being Braden Wilmus, who is 6'8" and already, he needs to add a little bulk. He's around 300 pounds. He's still a little thin for that frame, but he's got a lot of upside, man. They really kind of laid the foundation for the future of that offensive line room. I'm a big fan of both the quarterbacks, actually. Tate Reynolds, I've always been high on him since I watched him work out at camp a couple of summers ago or the summer before last. Unfortunately, he got hurt in his first game this year, pretty much missed the whole season, so he misses out on a year of development. He's probably going to be a guy that's going to need a year. I think the Bradley kid, Brock Bradley, he's rated a 3-star. I think, if he was a little bit bigger, he's probably a lot higher rated. He's got everything you want in a quarterback, except he's probably 5'11", 6 foot. He can make all the throws, man. He's got a really good arm. Always in command of that offense, and all he did there at Spain Park was win. Another one I really like is the safety, Kentavion Anderson, a local kid from there at Dorman. Clemson actually had 3 safeties committed in this class. They lose Blake Stewart, who most of the experts are really high on. He looked like a guy that could maybe come in and play nickel, which has, been a weakness on that defense for much of the season. They lose him to a decommitment. He ends up at Georgia. Then they kind of quietly lose Caden Gippard on signing day. Kid had been committed since March from up in Ohio. Really kind of got interested in Clemson when the Tigers hired Tom Allen. He was really intrigued by playing for Tom Allen. And this is going to sound like I'm knocking the kid, but I swear I'm not. A month before signing day, I had him on the phone for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we're talking about the couple of decommitments Clemson's already had, and he says, I guarantee you I'm not going to be one. I don't understand committing if you're really not committed, but and everybody will assume that Ohio State offered him more money and yada, yada, yada. It really, I don't think it came down to anything like that. I think the kid just decided he wanted to stay home, and Ohio State's like 15, 20 minutes from where he plays high school football. But he kind of quietly flipped on signing day. He could have easily done it, before that, and probably would not have helped Clemson from a perception standpoint. So kind of waiting and doing it quietly on signing day, helps keep the rest of the class intact, which, I commend him for. But right off the top of my head, those would be some of the positive things. One of the things that stands out in a negative light is you didn't sign a running back. They took a couple of swings, really went in on Jay Lamar, and when he did not commit, he ends up going to Georgia too. When he did not commit to Clemson back in the summer, they really never made a move on anybody else. I get it. If you look at the roster as it was during the season, the running back room's full, but you got to believe you're going to lose one or two of those guys to the portal. They're just not getting any opportunities. You've already lost one in Keith Adams Jr. Fully expect you're going to lose at least one more. We'll see. So makes me wonder if they don't have plans to maybe address that in the portal, but we'll see. But that would be the biggest, negative thing to stand out is you didn't sign a running back.
So when you look at the number of commits, 20 is a pretty small class. Not super small. They're certainly much smaller, especially this season. My goodness, recruiting rankings and these classes for some of these high-profile programs that have been impacted by either coaches changes or just maybe the transfer portal, and maybe programs relying more on that going forward. It's just odd to see where we're used to everybody's between that 18 to 25 range, and you see some of these classes, you see like 8 commits, and it's unbelievable. And it's like, what's going on here? So Clemson pretty standard there. Number 19 in the country is not going to excite people that just look at that and that's it. That's all they know. They want to see a 9 or a 3. They don't want to see a 19, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. That gives some indication, but with the rest of the team coming off a 7-5 season, is this indicative of where Clemson is, or does it really matter? Do you think it's a better class than 19? Are Clemson fans a bit lacking enthusiasm because of the ranking of the class? All of that.
I think what Clemson fans want to see, because you can obviously, I didn't mention defensive end. Clemson suffered a decommitment from Dre Quinn, back in September. They didn't make a whole lot of effort to really they went after Frank Whitley, a local guy who was kind of developmental guy. But outside of that, he ended up committing to Florida State. But outside of that, they didn't really, pound the pavement trying to add another end to the class. I think the story's not quite finished yet. I think you got to see what kind of moves they are going to try to make in the portal come next month. I really think they're going to try to address safety, defensive end. Those will be, and maybe even corner too, with Avion Terrell leaving a year early, and you're not signing a corner in the last class and only 2 in this one. So numbers are kind of low there. So I think it's a little incomplete. But if you're just talking about recruiting rankings in general, I think that, everybody wants to be top 5. Clemson's only had 2 top 5 classes ever under Dabo. I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit and gets, people always talk about all these top 5 classes, but Dabo's only had 2. The sweet spot's kind of been, as long as he's, somewhere between 7 and 14, 8 and 15, something like that. I think as long as you stay inside that top 15 range, you're good. In the last 2 years, you've not. They were not in the top 20 last year, not in the top 15 this year. So it leads to some gaps. And that's kind of what Dabo talks about when he talks about his portal philosophy. If we have a gap, that's what the portal is for, to address it. And, you've got some gaps that's going to be on this roster, once the season is officially over. And that's kind of the biggest thing with Clemson fans right now. They want to see how some of these gaps are addressed through the portal.
Folks, please like the video, subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Keep in mind, you can catch Jason's work there at the Clemson Insider. You see the X handle for both Jason and the Clemson Insider right there. We'll stay on the recruiting trail, move to 2027. Trey Wembley coming into the fold here at wide receiver in the last week.
Yeah, pretty good pickup for Clemson. If you look, he's a kid that just announced a couple of weeks ago that he was going to reclassify from 28 to 27. Before he made that announcement, he was considered a top 100 overall in the 24/7 rankings for the 28 class. I think one of the top 10 wide receivers in the class, if I'm remembering right. Obviously, he moves up a class. Those rankings took a big hit. He's not ranked anywhere close to that in the 27 class. But this is a kid that had 1,000 yards over there at Daniel this year. He's put together a couple of really good back-to-back seasons. I think before it's all said and done, he'll be a pretty solid receiver in this class. And he's the fifth 27 guy they've picked up already. You know, they hit on their quarterback back in the summer, Kareem Hughley Kareem Hughley. I can make sure I say that right. Kareem Hughley out of Gainesville there in Georgia. I went and watched him play earlier in the year, man. There's a lot to like about him, man. He might be the best quarterback prospect, you know, they've landed in a while, assuming they can hold on to him till next year. You know, you got Sammy Brown's little brother, Max Brown, a linebacker committed in the class already. Another legacy guy, and Christian Chancellor's already committed. I know I'm forgetting somebody else, but they're off to a pretty solid start with that class, man. And Trey Wembley might end up being one of the key pieces on the offensive side of the ball.
Folks, once again, please like the video and subscribe. And again, Jason's works at the Clemson Insider, all the recruiting, the bowl prep, and we will dive into baseball, I'm sure, here in the next couple months. So you can do that as well. Okay, on to the Pinstripe Bowl. As I mentioned off the top, these were whatever their rankings were. They were both in the top 4 in the country to start the season. Penn State and Clemson getting together in New York City at the Pinstripe Bowl. I always thought the bowl games were for warm weather during the holidays and to get away from the cold, but now they got baseball stadiums opening up in places like New York City and Boston for bowl games. And hey, more bowl games. I have no issue with bowl games. You can always turn them off if you don't like them. So I'm good with the bowl games. But you know, this matchup and just Clemson not. Let me start with this. Before we get to the bowl game, obviously they arrived at this, and this has been a slow grind. And if anything, they won the final 4 games to get to 7-5 versus like what we see at Notre Dame, where you got all these hopes, all these dreams, you get a good season, and boom, they're dashed, and then nobody wants to go to a bowl game. Then you've got other situations, Texas, Vanderbilt, other teams, BYU, that were right on the cusp of a playoff. Boom, you get a letdown of not going to the playoff. For Clemson, again, we saw this coming for months and months and months. Their letdown was in September. So in a sense, I think of that Iowa State bowl game, which I think was the first after the run of playoff appearances forever, where they went to the bowl game. They took a lot of pride in it. There was a lot of banter about, oh, well, Clemson's not going to show up. They don't want to be there. They're used to going to the playoff. And lo and behold, you know, Dabo rallies them. They get a lot of guys to stick around and play the game before they head off to their NFL prep, and they win the ball game against Iowa State. And based on everything that this program has shown us, and Dabo has his detractors, but if anything, it seems that he's able to, about better than anybody else, keep guys around to play in bowl games and play out the season.
Yeah, I remember asking him, you know, when they were 1-3, you know, after the loss to Syracuse, I asked him, you know, how do you keep this team bought in, you know, with the expectations that you guys had coming into the season, man. And, you know, he didn't hesitate. You know, he said that's just kind of what this program's built on, you know, and they come back and they win a couple of road games over Boston College, North Carolina. And, you know, you think they kind of got it back on the right path. And then they come home and just, you know, the defense just gets demolished and losses to SMU and Duke. And all of a sudden, you know, after rebounding to get back to 3-3, you're suddenly at 3-5, and he's faced with the same questions again. How do you keep them bought in? Well, they've not lost again, man. He knows somehow he knows exactly what buttons to push, I guess, in these situations. Because you touched on it a minute ago, that 21 season where they ended up in the Cheez-It Bowl with the close win over of Iowa State. You know, you go back to a couple of years ago when they were 4-4 and won their last 5, including the bowl win over Kentucky. You know, he's been able to do this. You know, this is, I think, the 3rd time now in the past 4 or 5 seasons that they've gone on a winning streak after a slow start. So there's something, you know, as much as I, you know, talk about how there might be some foundational things that need to be addressed in the offseason, you know, that part of the culture seems to be firmly in place, man. They get those guys, man, they stay bought in. You got guys on that team that, you know, look to be first-round draft picks, 2, maybe 3 of them, definitely 3 of them that'll probably go in the first 2 rounds. And, you know, they stay bought in the whole time. It doesn't look like anybody ever checked out. And I'm kind of interested to see, you know, exactly how many opt-outs they're going to have for this bowl game. They don't tend to have a lot most years. We'll see if that changes this year. So far, you know, there have been none. Technically, we've had Peter Woods and TJ Parker and Avion Terrell, all 3 announced that they're entering the draft. Terrell got hurt against South Carolina. I have no idea how much this impacts any of these guys' plans to play in a bowl game. I lean towards thinking they probably won't play, but none of them have officially said they're opting out. You know, so, but outside of those 3 guys, I am kind of anxious to see, you know, who does suit up and play in this game. You know, I lean towards thinking most of them probably will. Guys like Cade Klubnik, Wade Woodaz, Adam Randall, even Antonio Williams. I think he'll probably suit up and play. You know, guys that won't be back next year that all just want to go out and, you know, make one more run together.
I got to admit, Jason, I get fooled by the helmets. And when I see a listing like this, Clemson, Penn State, there's another one, Michigan, Texas, there's a few others. I'm bought in. I know that they're not good football teams. I know that they might have some opt-outs, but I still get bought into the logos and want to see the brand names play each other. And so I think that's kind of cool. I don't know if the fan base cares if they're playing Penn State versus playing somebody who's got less of a name, if that juices up the fan base at all. But it is, you know, the ACC and the Big Ten. We don't see these matchups very often. And I truly hope that there's some semblance of a team on both sides to make it a real football game.
Yeah, you know, the other option was kind of, you know, sounds like the other option for Clemson would have been playing Arizona State in the Sun Bowl. No disrespect to those guys, but that, you know, when you put Penn State there opposite Clemson, that's much more appealing. Those are 2, you know, big boy football brands, no matter what happened this season. Penn State just coming off a deep playoff run last year. You know, so yeah, you know, again, I think there has been some apathy that's kind of set in during this season. I don't know of anybody that's overly excited about the Pinstripe Bowl. I mean, let's be quite honest. But I do think playing a Penn State makes it more appealing as opposed to playing Arizona State out there in the warm in Texas. You know, and these kids also get to go up there and play in Yankee Stadium. You know, not many people get an opportunity to do that. You know, at least there is some positive to go up there and playing in the cold. You get to do something, you know, not a lot of people get to do every year, I guess.
I would take a guess at this, Jason. Some people might be surprised at the I'm not making any predictions that it's going to be warm in New York City after Christmas. That's not it. But at the Sun Bowl in El Paso, they've had snow for that game. It's Texas, I get it, but where
I thought of that as soon as I said it.
They and it's usually really windy. It's usually not snowing, but it's like 40 and really windy. In New York City, you're either going to get brutally cold. It's going to be cold for you and cold for Southerners, no doubt. But it's either going to be cold, like it's 45, and hopefully you get a sunny day and it's 45. That's about the best you can hope for. Or it could be like brutally cold and just nobody wants to be outside. But yeah, it is. I do think it's kind of cool playing at Yankee Stadium for a football game, and kind of interesting to see the baseball configuration in a football field in the middle of the stadium. I always thought that was cool.
And Dabo's a Yankees fan, so, you know, you get to add that. You know, Tom Allen was there at Penn State last year, and as you touched on at the top, 2 teams ranked inside the top 5 that have totally just fallen flat on their face. You know, that ought to be enough drama.
There we go. We've got Penn State. We got Clemson. Recruiting update from Jason as well. Check out his work at the Clemson Insider. Jason, we appreciate you stopping by.
Always appreciate you having me, my friend.